talk to people and talk to potential customers or potential users. Even if whatever you're thinking about is or isn't IP protected, really trying to understand what the customer problems are, and because in fast-moving field, what was the problem 6-12 months ago is not the problem today. So get out there, talk to people, and understand whether your idea really resonates with potential customers or partners.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vinay. I lead investor partnerships for EMEA at Tracxn. Welcome to our interview series with investors. Joining us today, Michael and Ian, two partners at Cambridge Innovation Capital. Michael has been with CIC for nearly a decade and has played a central role in building the forum into one of the UK's leading investors in life sciences and deep tech, closely connected to the University of Cambridge ecosystem. He works hands-on with founders as they move forward from breakthrough science to scalable companies, and is actively involved at board level across multiple CIC portfolio companies. Michael also brings a strong research-led perspective to venture, combining scientific depth with long-term company building. We are also joined by Ian, partner at Cambridge Innovation Capital. He focuses on deep tech investments across AI, future of compute, robotics, and quantum. Ian brings a rare combination of academic depth with a PhD in physical chemistry from the University of Cambridge and extensive investing experience, including over a decade at Unilever Ventures, backing and scaling global technology businesses. At CIC, Ian works closely with founders building highly technical companies, helping them navigate their transition from cutting-edge technology to real-world scalable impact. Together, Michael and Ian represent CIC's science-led hands-on approach to venture, combining deep technical understanding with long-term capital and operational support. This conversation follows the launch of CIC's new £100 million opportunity fund focused on supporting portfolio companies as they scale, addressing what is often described as the UK's scale-up gap. Michael and Ian, thank you both for being with us today. We really appreciate you joining the conversation.
Thanks, Vinay. Pleased to be here.
Great. To start, I'd love to begin with CIC's philosophy around science and people. CIC often says science and people matter. What does that philosophy mean in how you select and support founders?
Ian, do you want to start? I can join in.
Yeah, thank you. I think when there's a debate and discussion about particularly spin-outs in the UK, there's a lot of focus upon IP and technology. And of course, that IP and technology is world-class and is critically important. But just as important is the people that help nurture that technology and IP into a product that a customer wants, that a customer buys, and that requires a significant range of different skill sets. So we're looking for original technical-based founders who are able to recruit and work with multidisciplinary teams, but that can help them scale it and grow. So that's why we talk about people and technology, because the technology on its own is not enough. The people on their own is not enough. It's the combination of both. So that's what we spend a huge amount of our time focusing on that.
Interesting how you emphasize your place on how founders think. Just a follow-up question here, like what excites you about research-led founders?
Mike, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. So Ian and I are both fundamentally scientists. We both did our PhDs in our areas of interest. And so we have taken the leap from being at the lab bench and into a more commercial setting. But our heart is really sort of passionate about the underlying science. And so when we meet exciting entrepreneurial academics, those are the sorts of folks that we really want to work with and be able to speak their language, but ideally help them bring in other talent, bring in capital to create global category leading businesses. And as Ian alluded to, the people are just as important as the technologies, but the academic founders are really the key ingredient that makes these companies a success.
Oh, excellent. Now, a follow-up question. CIC has a unique partnership with the University of Cambridge. How does this give you early insight into future company information?
So when Ian and I both joined, part of the exciting offering that CIC has is this partnership with Cambridge University. And as you can tell from my accent, I'm not originally from the UK, but when you look at innovation in the UK, it mostly stems out of universities. Of course, there are great exceptions, and it's not to say that university is the only source of innovation, but it's a really important source of innovation. So having a venture capital fund with a deep long-term partnership with one of Europe's great universities is a novel and exciting place to be. And so that's a real differentiator for us. And what I would say is that the university takes a really long-term approach on the way they do research and the way they do innovation. And that's not dissimilar to the way CIC looks at things, which is we want to be backing the cutting edge deep tech and life sciences. So by being physically close to one of Europe's greatest sources of deep tech and life science innovation, then hopefully we can have a unique and exciting advantage with that strategy.
Excellent. So the early visibility into ideas and talent is a real differentiator.
Yeah, and on that, we often talk about ecosystems, and the question is, what exactly is that? And sometimes people talk about ecosystems, they talk about bricks and mortar buildings, but the most important thing for us is within a cluster like Cambridge, you have the university, you have the research facilities, you have startups, you have big tech companies, and there is a constant flow of talent moving between those institutions, learning, working out what is best practice in each of those different areas, and then moving on. And actually, when you really think about the secret sauce about ecosystems like Cambridge, it's that flow of people, and that's what we're trying to tap in. And the advantage of having a close relationship with the university, literally from incorporation of CIC, is that we are sort of deeply integrated within that ecosystem, which is a really sort of privileged position for us as investors.
Excellent. Now, beyond access to IP, what does Cambridge ecosystem uniquely enable for deep tech and life science founders?
You go for it, Ian.
So when you're trying to discover or evaluate, is my idea or my piece of IP commercially relevant? There's two things you can do. You can either lock yourself in a dark room for a few days and sort of with a whiteboard and think it out, or the approach that we tend to prefer, which is you speak to sort of key opinion leaders or potential customers and evaluate, is this really solving a critical problem that is A, large enough, and B, pressing enough that they're going to stop what they're previously doing and adopt the new technology. So the fact that there is so much activity here within the ecosystem, you're able to have multiple conversations with key opinion leaders locally to evaluate whether this technology really can address a big enough market and solve that. So that for me is it's the proximity of conversations that you can happen really quickly, and that enables you to quickly work out whether what you're working on is something you should be spending more time on.
If I just build on Ian's points, Ian and I both come from previous careers with a very international employers, and so we come at CIC and our investment strategy with a global mindset, and success for us is to identify what the Cambridge UK ecosystem is truly world class at, and then pair those ideas, those innovators with global talent, global capital. And so our goal, which is maybe a little bit simplified, is to build global category leading businesses that start in Cambridge. And it's fair to say Cambridge UK will not be the world leader at every innovation. And part of the fun that Ian and I have is being able to meet the people, the key opinion leaders in Cambridge who are the best in their field, and build global companies around them. So we're very outward looking the entire time. We're not inward looking.
Yeah, and that is really important when you start talking about the scale up discussion, because many of the large LP or investors in our funds not only want to deploy their capital, but they also want access to later stage scale up deal flow where they would invest directly. So it's really important when we're thinking about an opportunity. Often we're thinking about, if we were to walk into, a large pension fund in London or sovereign wealth fund in the Middle East or Asia, is this a deal that is going to be attractive to them when they're thinking about deploying later stage capital? So that when we're thinking about building 50, 100, 200 million rounds later down the track, we know that that's going to appeal to them.
Right. The density of talent and experience is actually hard to replicate. It explains why so many globally relevant companies can emerge from a relatively smaller geography, right? Great thoughts. Thank you both. Where do research-driven founders most often need support when transitioning from academia to company building?
It's probably different between deep tech and life sciences, although of course there are some common threads. I'll start with life sciences, which is in many cases, the founder of a life sciences company does not have the ambitions to be the CEO of the company. In many cases, the founder is a world expert in the particular biology or disease that he or she is working on, and wants to push that biology, push that drug, push that medical device into patients to help solve real sort of tangible healthcare issues. The skill set of running a venture-backed company is often different. And so what we often see is actually the academic founders being either board members or even sort of scientists and chief scientific officers and chief technology officers in companies. And often a CEO will be brought in with a fresh set of experience, a different set of experience to run these companies. And so there's a slightly different dynamic, I would say, in many of these cases. And the key is to make sure that we help get that sort of people chemistry right and ensure that we have diversity of thought, diversity of experiences around the table to grow these big companies. Slightly different in many cases on Ian's side.
Yeah, so on the deep tech side, I think that there are examples across the UK and internationally where academic or technology-based founders have progressed and be able to be the CEO and take their leadership role, particularly where there's deep technical-driven companies. There are examples of that, and there are other examples where they've either taken advisory roles or CTO roles or within the company. I think the aspect that technical or academic founders need to work on in a lot of the companies I see is that scientists often see broader applicability for technology or their invention. They can see many areas and many different verticals where their technology can work. And many times everything is a platform. The reality is when you're talking to potential customers or potential design partners, they want to speak to people who talk their language, people who have been living and breathing within the vertical that they've been in. So if you have a team that is too broad, is trying to sell into many different verticals, they don't have that domain expertise within those different areas to understand and talk the right language and make sure that the product, the technology is optimized for the customer in that vertical, and that everyone in the company is really living and breathing that problem. So I think that's sometimes where technical founders need a bit of support to either really work out, is this a platform that can be addressed in many verticals, or when they should really focus on one vertical and what that vertical is. So that's sometimes a challenge, but the advantage of scientists, of course, is that you get to think about and explore all those areas before you decide. Right.
So Ian and Michael, so these life science founders, they tend to exit early. That's a common phenomenon.
They don't, when you say exit, so the in general, life sciences founders remain part of the company for the life of the company, but in many cases not as the CEO. They would be part of the company either as a scientific role, technology role, or on the board. That is the common path in life sciences.
So when you back a very early stage life science startup, like, do you often provide the guidance and hands-on support to your founders? I mean, in general, that's what the life science focused VCs do. Just a follow-up question here.
Absolutely. So there's many different models for how you can build and invest in a life sciences company. We can talk about our entrepreneur in residence program in a second. But with life sciences, there is a trend to do larger investment rounds earlier in the life of a company. And so in life sciences, it's starting to be less of a trend to do a pre-seed round, then a seed round, then an A round, then a B round. What's happening is the sort of pre-seed and seed and A, and sometimes even the B, are being all wrapped up together in a single tranched investment. And what that does is a couple of things. It allows companies to have reduced financing risk. And so at least for the first 5-6 years of the company, you've got a really good sense of where that capital is coming from. That allows you to go faster. You're spending less time fundraising. You're spending more time doing the science and progressing the company. Absolutely. And what it also does is when you have quite a lot of capital committed around the table from day one, you can attract a really experienced chief executive officer, someone who's done it once, twice, 3 times beforehand, to enter a company much earlier than if the company had only raised a small seed round, which wouldn't be appropriate for necessarily a highly experienced CEO. And so this is all about speed and getting the most robust talent in companies early to drive for success.
Right. Thank you, Mike, for adding that. Coming to your EIR program, it's a cornerstone of CIC strategy. Why is venture creation an important complement to traditional venture investing?
I'll start, Ian, and then you can build on that. Just picking up the points I mentioned beforehand. With life sciences companies, we're looking to bring in larger rounds of capital earlier for the reasons that I mentioned. And to do so, it's really important that the starting point of a company is done really well, following best practices. And so the foundations that you want to build from day one need to be strong enough to be able to take on this large amount of capital and robust teams. And what we've found, and CIC is certainly not a pioneer in an entrepreneur residence program, many VCs use this, but if you can have in-house talent, so highly experienced talent on CIC's books, then we can partner academic entrepreneurs and experienced talent from day one. And that allows, it's almost a catalytic effect. Whereas if you can bring together a future leader of the company with the academic entrepreneur in the offices of a venture capital fund, you can bring those 3 components together very, very quickly from day one. And we found that to be a really, really successful strategy for us.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on it. Now, Opportunity Fund. Right. CIC recently launched a £100 million opportunity fund. What were the core goals behind launching this fund?
The core point this is an opportunity fund that enables us to really sort of double down and support our investments out of our core fund. So our core fund is in an early stage venture fund that's writing checks of anywhere between £2 to £10 million into early stage venture businesses. The opportunity fund therefore then comes in and follows, so it doesn't lead investments in later rounds, but where there's a good external lead coming in to support the business, we're able to supersize those rounds and write checks anywhere from £5 to £50 million into those following rounds, which really enables us to say to a founder, look, we have the capability to invest 20-30 million pounds into your company over the lifetime, which from our perspective is starting to address some of the shortages of capital that some of our late stage companies have seen historically. So rarely now, if we're looking at an opportunity and we're confident the team has the capabilities to scale and grow, and we've got really good technology addressing a big problem, we always be confident now that we can build the right syndicates and raise the right capital for those companies. When we look back in the past and where we haven't been able to, it's often been an issue either with the technology, the product, or the team, that's meant that we haven't been able to raise enough later stage capital. So yeah, this is another string to our bow that really helps us support founders.
Great, Ian, thank you. I think that makes the intent behind the fund very clear. Now, a quick follow-up question. What specific gap were you seeing, either in the market or within your portfolio, that this fund is designed to address?
One of the visions of CIC over the medium to long term is to truly be an end-to-end investor. And so you can imagine a scenario where a fantastic academic has an idea for his or her next company. If CIC can be involved on the ground floor by building the team through entrepreneur in residence program, by building the necessary funding syndicate to allow the company to go at pace, if we can be supporting the companies from that early stage all the way through the scale up and even beyond into public listings and such, then that's a one-stop shop for entrepreneurs and a really attractive opportunity for them. And we're not there yet, but that's the vision that we have over the medium term. And that's a vision I think pairs nicely to the level of ambition we're seeing founders have here in the Cambridge ecosystem.
Great. How does the Opportunity Fund differ from CIC's early stage fund in terms of mandate, or how you work with the founders? Is there a sort of a difference here?
No, so the key points are what I alluded to earlier. So the Opportunity Fund would not price around, so it would follow, and would look to invest once a large portion of the technical risk has been retired. So the core fund is designed, it will take technical risk and evaluate that, and then once that's been retired and de-risked, then the Opportunity Fund can come in alongside other external investors to help scale commercially.
Great. Any signals tell you that a company is ready for an Opportunity Fund capital?
I'm waiting for Ian to be polite, but the profile is pretty clear when we see it. And so if I think about examples in our portfolio that have gone from the core funds into the Opportunity Fund, one great example on the healthcare side is a company called CMR Surgical, which is a medical robotics company. The future of surgery is without a doubt with assisted robotic surgery. The patient outcomes are far superior. The health economics are more attractive. So, robotics will be a crucial part of healthcare moving forward. And CMR Surgical is a company that we were the first institutional investor in through our core funds. And that company is now at a different stage of its life where the technology risk has been retired and we've got great product market fit. So we're seeing revenues, we're seeing users love the offering. It is now about growth. And so the Opportunity Fund is a great vehicle to allow CIC to put more capital into CMR Surgical now that it's hit a different profile. And so it truly is growth capital to be able to have the company become sort of what we started the conversation off with, a global category leading business, and in this case in robotics.
Yeah.
Do you want to do an example on the tech side, Ian?
Well, I was just thinking, Mike, while you were talking, and I was trying to think about signals and your question there. And so obviously a lot of our companies think about growth capital and whether they should raise it or shouldn't raise it. Some are successful, some are not successful, and trying to think about what are the common factors or signals, as you mentioned. And for me, one of the key ones is founding teams are able to really articulate what they're doing. Layman's terms isn't the right one, but in day-to-day language, this is the problem, this is our technology, this is why we're making that pain go away.
Right.
Founding teams that are able to do that, the pools of capital globally are there. Those that are still telling, these are still science and technical-led companies at their heart, but if they're still telling us a science-led story, that is when they struggle. So that is the key thing for me, is now obviously on day one when we first meet a lot of these founders, the story is deeply technical, deeply science-driven. Now that DNA stays in those companies forever, particularly with the pace of innovation. They always need to be at the cutting edge, but the story and the narrative changes and evolves. So when founders want to raise that scale up growth capital, they need to think about what that narrative is that isn't necessarily science and technical led, and is more customer problem market led. And if those that are able to make that transition are often successful at raising growth capital.
Thank you, Ian and Mike, for sharing the tangible signals. Appreciate it. Now, moving on to Cambridge Innovation Capital's scale from signals and execution. Right, CIC consistently produces world-class innovation. What typically breaks or slows down when companies try to scale?
There's multiple factors. Scaling companies is really tough. It's very, very tough, and it's one of the things that I think differentiates investors in terms of how they support scaling companies. What we find is that often, building on some of Ian's points he just made earlier, the challenges are different from an early stage to a later stage company. So there's technology challenges versus sort of market challenges that often requires different skill sets around the table and different teams. And there's often a natural succession from one leadership type to another. And so managing that is important and can be tricky. And often investors have different requirements as they go from an early stage to a later stage, and managing that syndicate and the needs of each fund. So there's multiple aspects at play. Some of them are internal challenges within the company, and some of them are external challenges. And so we spend our time navigating those very, very carefully. And the experience that a fund like CIC has, having done this for 15 years now, we've seen most things play out. And so we can, I hope, be helpful early warning detection systems for our CEOs and our founders, and make sure that we can help them avoid some of the bear traps.
Right, that's a useful reminder that scale introduces new problems, not just more of the same ones. It's often organizational, not technical. So great thoughts. A follow-up question on the scale. So what are the early warning signs that a company may be scaling too early or in the wrong direction?
This is a challenge all the time. I think as venture investors and founders, if you wait for all of the signal to be there before investing ahead for the future, particularly in fast-moving worlds like novel therapeutics or AI or machine learning or robotics or quantum, you're going to be too late. So we're, as investors and the founders that we back are always trying to think about where they need to be in 6 to 12 months' time, and deploy capital against that, such that when those milestones are passed, they're ready to go, ready to scale, and there isn't a sort of 6-12 month lag, because competing companies in Asia or North America will soon catch up. And so we are constantly balancing the need for not wanting to scale too early versus scaling too late. And so what we're looking for is an appreciation. The founding teams are thinking about that and thinking about the balance, and they're not myopically at one end or the other, because those teams that don't get that it's a balance tend to be a bit of a red flag. Those that think about the advantages of scaling too early versus the disadvantages and then come up with a balanced solution are the teams that we enjoy working with, and it's been less problems in the past. So that's the red flag for me, is the teams not thinking about that spectrum.
Great, thank you for sharing these incredibly important suggestions. Now, moving on to CIC's impact, like CIC integrates impact and ESG considerations into its investment process. How do you think about the link between responsible innovation and long-term value creation?
I think it's quite straightforward one for us. The sorts of things that we're investing in right now are helping the lives of people, in many cases helping the planet. And so we are directly aligned with what our core investment strategy is. and ensuring that we have sustainability and appropriate impact. So it's very much part of the DNA of CIC.
Yeah, and this is an area our team here at CIC have taken sort of leadership role within the UK venture ecosystem on this topic, working with LPs and portfolio companies to such that we're thinking about it and we're helping our portfolio companies think about it and we're helping our LPs think about it as well. So we spend a lot of time on this.
Great. As we move closer to the end of this conversation, if you were advising a first-time deep tech or life science founders today, what would you encourage them to focus on much earlier than they typically do?
Okay, I'll go first. So for me, is to get out there and talk to people and talk to potential customers or potential users. Even if whatever you're thinking about is or isn't sort of IP protected, really trying to understand what the customer problems are, and because in fast moving fields, and there's many of them at the moment, what was the problem 6-12 months ago is not the problem today. So get out there, talk to people, and understand whether your idea really resonates with potential customers or partners.
Yeah, I love that. I wholeheartedly agree with what Ian said. An additional point is to be really thinking about or communicating your business from a future tense. What we find is a lot of folks that come in and pitch us are talking about where their company is today, and that's the safe space. People know their companies and what's happening today, and they can really go deep on that. Those that can talk about where they want their company to be in 5 years, even 10 years time, that's highly differentiating. And so being able to really project the future, even though it may be wrong, and it may have to have some assumptions in there, it's important to get a sense of where the company should be going, where they want to take that company.
Great. Mike and Ian, that's incredibly very practical advice and something many founders wish they had heard earlier. A great note to end on. Michael and Ian, thank you so much for such a thoughtful conversation. It's been great look at how science, people, and capital come together to build globally impactful companies. We really appreciate you both taking the time to share CIC's perspective with us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks
for being a great host, Vinay. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.